We embrace stuff because we see some problem that's galling to us and we want to solve it, right? That's the progressive instinct. And so we tear apart some rule that seems antiquated to us, and we notice that, we've liberated ourselves in some way. And then 20 years later, 30 years later, we discover, holy crap, we liberated ourselves in this way, and then we constrained ourselves in some other way, and we have to do a net analysis, and that the carnage is tremendous if you did that. Mm-hmm. If you did it one thing at a time, it would be bad enough, right? The needless losses of doing it that way would be intolerable, in my opinion. But when you do it on every front,
we're doing it this way now instead of occasionally kind of moving up the ladder or something.
We are revolutionizing our civilization each decade, which means you don't get time to even figure out what the consequences of the last change you made are before you're somehow on to some next monumental change.
What does that tell you about the evolutionary process of the forces that have led us here on the negative side? So if the forces on the positive side and the ideas of classical liberalism, let's say, and the things that have been good for the last 250 years, if those are pretty good but clearly faltering, what does it tell you about the bad ideas that somehow got into the system?
There are a couple of concepts. Maybe I'll step back 1 second. What we teach people, even before the academy went completely insane, the set of things that we would teach somebody on the way to graduating from college was pretty arbitrary. It was not the set of things that you would really want to have on board in order to live a life in which you were empowered to do meaningful things. It was just sort of some set of things that people had taught in the past and seemed like they were still useful.
Are you saying lesbian badminton 201 isn't?
No, I mean even really almost everything. We don't teach the right geology, frankly, in order to understand what kind of a planet you live on. The biology we teach is not focused on the things that actually allow you to figure out how to evaluate claims about a medication or a food, or we are teaching an arbitrary curriculum, and it's now it's turned into a toxic curriculum. But arbitrary wasn't very good. And so one of the things that
do you think that was arbitrary, or do you think that was by design? I mean, when all the liberal arts colleges started teaching all of this nonsense instead of teaching, I don't know, say either better at STEM subjects or financial literacy, let's say,
yep,
which nobody learned in high school, and then they get to college and then they don't even teach it. Do you think, is that arbitrary, or is that intentional?
The last chapter clearly involves a whole hell of a lot of sabotage, and frankly, the folks who invented postmodernism were pretty straightforward about the fact that they were interested in sabotage, so it shouldn't surprise us. But I mean, even before that, we were dealing with a chaotic collection of ideas that weren't we left a lot of value on the table for no good reason. And so one thing I would do is I would look at certain concepts that are just disproportionately important. I didn't learn about Chesterton's fence until, I don't know, 2016, maybe even later, right? Chesterton's fence is an incredibly important principle. The precautionary principle is incredibly important. The relevance that these things have to the battle between, and I don't even want to say battle, the tension between conservatism and progressivism, which is a natural tension. I think if you kill either of those things off, you end up in one disaster or another. So understanding that just because you don't know why something that we do is there, it doesn't mean it's actually pointless. And you damn well better keep track of what happens. If you decide something like the rules of interaction between the sexes, if you think, oh, that's just, it's prudishness, it's oppressive, it's, whatever force you want to attribute it to, and we're wiser than that. We know we're just primates, and let's just get over it and stop pretending sex is something other than it is. Okay, there's not that there's no truth in that. There is some truth in it, but when you get rid of all those rules, you invite a whole lot of chaos that you didn't anticipate. And it is incumbent on you at least to track the consequences of the change and see how they match with what you thought was going to happen. If we had done that, right, if we were comparing the world of 2023 with the world of 1960, we could say, oh, there are some things that are quite a bit better. And then there are a whole bunch of things that are a whole lot worse. And we could start looking at cause and effect and say, actually, we could get the best of both of those worlds without paying the huge price we do by, drawing a line here.
But is the inherent problem with that is that that's just not how humans organize or actually respond to things. So, for example, you could say, like, gay marriage to me was obviously a completely just mission in that it was equality for people to live the way they wish. There probably should have been a discussion around it, okay, what's going to come after this then? And now this radical trans thing, which has nothing to do with equality and now is an assault on science and biology and blah, blah, that there should have, you're basically asking for, can there be like a post-mortem on the good things so we don't let in the bad things? But it's almost just not how humans operate, right? We just look then for the next thing. And that, I guess, is the problem.
You're right. This is exactly how we do things.
I get one a show.
No, you're right on target. But notice this. We embrace stuff because we see some problem that's galling to us and we want to solve it, right? That's the progressive instinct. And so we tear apart some rule that seems antiquated to us. And we notice that, we've liberated ourselves in some way. And then 20 years later, 30 years later, we discover, holy crap, we liberated ourselves in this way, and then we constrained ourselves in some other way, and we have to do a net analysis, and that the carnage is tremendous if you did that. If you did it one thing at a time, it would be bad enough, right? The needless losses of doing it that way would be intolerable, in my opinion. But when you do it on every front,
we're doing it this way now instead of occasionally kind of moving up the ladder or something.
We are revolutionizing our civilization each decade, which means you don't get time to even figure out what the consequences of the last change you made are before you're somehow onto some next monumental change. There is anybody who has gotten good at, let's say, making a car run knows you can't do this. Right? If you have a problem with a car, it's not running, right? You change one thing at a time and you figure out which thing causes it suddenly to run. Now you know what the problem is, you know what to do. If you say, the car doesn't run, it could be the starter, it could be the alternator, it could be the battery, it could be the wiring harnesses, and you change them all and it still doesn't run, you don't know that you didn't change the thing that was broken and introduce another thing that wasn't working and that it's now not running for a whole new reason. Right? You can't do it that way. So one of the lessons here is the rebellion into conservatism is largely right because we've done a lot of foolish things and we've done it too fast and too many of them. But it cannot be allowed to silence the progressive instinct because the way we got here is through progressivism.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.